Look, I'm gonna be honest here, I'm not even the slightest bit sure how to open this review. Like, this video was not planned at all. Originally, I was going to be starting work on Fire Emblem Engage, but then Nintendo decided to shadow drop a freaking Metroid game. You know what, let's talk about that for a minute. What timeline are we living in that we get a remaster for one of the most beloved Metroid games shadow dropped for 40 bucks? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm happy that this exists, but a part of me almost feels offended this wasn't hyped up at all. I mean, I suppose I can't really be that upset, because with us being 5 years in and still no word on Prime 4, at this point I'll take whatever bone I can get, especially when it looks this enticing. If I'm gonna be frank here, I've actually been looking for an excuse to make another Metroid video for a while now, because my Metroid Dread review, as well as every video prior to my Xenoblade 1 review, was terrible. Most of those are getting remade someday, because I can do way better now. For now though, let's talk about Metroid Prime, because let me tell ya, it was great to finally revisit this incredible game after what's been a good few years for me, especially when it's been remade this well. Taking place after the events of the first Metroid, Samus, ironically enough, intercepts a distress call from the space pirates aboard their frigate Orpheon stationed near Tallon IV. Through the various data logs on the ship, you discovered that the space pirates were killed by the wildlife they had been experimenting on with a strange radioactive substance known as phazon. After losing her powers in the dumbest way the series has ever seen, she heads to Tallon IV's surface in pursuit of the new and improved, cybernetically enhanced Meta Ridley, and to stop the space pirates' phazon experiments. Metroid Prime is very hands-off with its storytelling. In the role of Samus Aran, it's up to you to learn more about the world of Tallon IV and what's going on with the scan visor. This method of storytelling is one of the many things that allow Metroid Prime to be as immersive as it is. Yes, as many have said before me, immersion was one of the key goals in the game's development, and even so many years later, it still more than succeeds at this goal. Things like making the UI feel completely diegetic by making the edges of Samus's visor visible on screen, and even seeing reflections of her face every now and then. Heck, going back to the game's storytelling by making it so that you, the player, have to play an active role in learning what's going on, it gets you looking for little things in the environment that help paint a picture of just what happened to the world around you. All of these details and many more help make Metroid Prime still be one of the most immersive experiences I've had in a game. Honestly, this is probably the absolute best remaster of a game I've ever seen. Like, this isn't just an upscaled port. Seemingly every part of the game was completely remade, and it looks incredible. The world of Tallon IV has never had a better atmosphere thanks to the beautifully remastered version of the game's many areas, and being able to see little details like the rain hit Samus's visor and arm cannon in Tallon IV's overworld are wonderful. Honestly, I genuinely can't give enough praise to how well done this is. I've never been a stickler for graphical quality in my games, because quite honestly, I usually don't really care, but on a critical level, Metroid Prime sets the new standard for how a remaster should be handled. The gameplay though is just as good as it ever was, and I gotta say, this most recent playthrough has made me realize just how well Metroid Prime has held up after all these years. To this day, I don't know if I've played Metroidvanias quite as unique as the Prime games are, as not only the first first-person perspective Metroidvania, but also the first 3D Metroid game. I gotta say, Prime 1 was a fantastic first attempt at something very different for the series. Unlike a normal Metroidvania, every area is of course completely three-dimensional, and the addition of also being in first person allows for some very interesting new mechanics for the series. I brought up the scan visor before in regards to storytelling, but in gameplay it's a great tool for not only learning about how an enemy mechanically operates, but also for puzzle solving. A lot of things are scannable in the game, and it's a good idea to get into the habit of scanning literally everything you can find, not only for 100% completion if you care about that, but also for knowing what is and isn't destroyable. Certain materials are breakable by certain abilities, like Cordite with super missiles and Bendesium with power bombs. It's great to scan these things so you can make a mental note of it for later when you have the right upgrades. I will say though, as a quick word of advice, if you do genuinely care about 100% completion, and you've never played Metroid Prime before, it's actually very easy to miss certain scans, so when I say scan everything, I do in fact mean scan everything. The last thing you want is to make it to the end, only to find out you missed one random thing on the frigate Orpheon. To go along with that, you also have the thermal and X-ray visors. The thermal visor does pretty much exactly what you think it would do, and is used pretty well, but I don't know how I feel about the blur effect the remaster added. On one hand, it feels more realistic, and it adds to the immersion, but on the other hand, it sorta messes with my eyes. Let me know down below how you personally feel about this, because I have a gut feeling this might just be a me thing. The X-ray visor, though, allows you to see that which cannot be seen, and is used decently well. Put a pin in this though, we're gonna be coming back to it later for a different point entirely. Then we have what is mechanically my personal favorite part of the Prime games with the beams. First off, I love how the remaster added the option for twin stick controls, cause while I was fine with the GameCube controls, these feel way better. So here's the thing about how Prime 1 and 2 handles the beams. Unlike most other games in the series, they don't stack here, which is something I personally prefer. Don't get me wrong, I love the feeling of building up your arm cannon as this godly super weapon, but I really like how making them separate allows for each individual upgrade to feel more important. The normal power beam may be the weakest, but it's the only weapon that can hurt the Chozo ghosts, and its beam combo is the only way to fire super missiles, meaning you'll still have to come back to good old reliable every now and then. The wave beam is great since it screws with the space pirates' drones, and can even stun enemies with a charged attack. The ice beam is the slowest to fire, with it being comparable to a shotgun, but when charged, it completely freezes enemies, allowing for an immediate kill with a missile. The plasma beam is a great weapon when you just want to vaporize whatever poor, unfortunate soul decided to pick a fight with you. Utility-wise, there's not much to it, but it's a beam that fires the same stuff the sun's made out of. Death is the only purpose it could really serve. On a different note though, I really liked all of Prime's major areas as well, with all of them being very well made. The Chozo Ruins are a great starting area for getting you familiar with the world of Tallon IV, and even giving you a really good idea of the story at large. Phendrana Drifts is a gorgeous snow area with some very lovely music to accompany it. Honestly, it might just be my favorite area in the game. I just love how peaceful it all feels. The Magmoor Caverns is a nice little connector area to the rest of the world, and while I could see people getting tired of having to backtrack through here as much as what you'll inevitably have to do, I liked it for what it was. The Phazon Mines are a fairly big difficulty spike compared to the others, thanks to how tough some of the enemies can be here, but I did like it. You're basically raiding the Space Pirates' major stronghold on Tallon IV, so it makes sense they'd pull out all the stops here. I will say, this area does have one problem for me. Remember the X-Visor I mentioned before? Yeah, this is where that becomes relevant, because I really don't like that I have to backtrack out of the area to grab both this thing and the plasma beam. Once you get the power bombs and grapple beam about halfway through, you'll need to go back and grab these to finish the area, and this really breaks the pacing of it for me. It just doesn't feel good to have to backtrack all the way through the roughest place in the game for items just to have to walk all the way back so I can finish the area. I'm fine with going back for upgrades, but when it's in the middle of an area like this, it just feels kinda awkward. Aside from that though, exploration generally feels really good. I loved exploring Tallon IV again with the improved visuals, and going back and finding stuff I missed like missile tanks feels just as good here as it does in any other game for the series. On a bit of a different note though, if there was one thing I do wish the remaster added, it was the addition of saying on the map what rooms has upgrades still in it. I'm not exactly a completionist, but if I'm near a room where I missed something, I'd like to know so I can see if I can grab it now or if I need to come back later. If you enjoy going through every area in your Metroidvanias with a fine-tooth comb though, you probably won't care one way or the other. I just think it would have been a nice little change for those new to the game, but it's not that big a deal at all. Aside from that, I don't have any complaints. Maybe I could bring up the Chozo artifact hunt, but honestly it's really not that bad. It really only took me an hour and a half, but that's only because I predominantly saved it for the end of the game. You can get some of these kinda early on if you know where they are. Metroid Prime is so incredibly well made, even the weak parts of it aren't really that big a problem. It's a game that really has held up amazingly well over the years. Honestly, I'm still a little shocked that I'm making a video on this game with the version I am. I was always going to talk about the Prime games eventually, but I never expected I'd get to start with one of the best remasters I've ever seen. With the release of Metroid Prime Remastered, it definitely seems like Prime 4 is a ways off, but in the meantime, those who haven't played them before can start with this, and if you're interested, definitely try it out. For $40, you're getting a really great Metroidvania that even to this day holds up incredibly well. If my thinking is right though, you also might not have to wait too long if you enjoyed this one. I could be wrong, but based on this game being straight up shadow dropped and that there's no word of Prime 4 in sight, I have a feeling Nintendo might do the same thing with the other two Prime games. In fact, I wouldn't be too shocked if later this year they also shadow drop a remaster of the game's sequel, Echoes. And hopefully this gut feeling of mine is right, because I actually like that one more than the first. That being said though, well, I'm really glad I was finally able to make a Metroid video that deep down I'm actually kinda happy with. Next time we'll be back on track with the video I initially planned to do on Fire Emblem Engage. Thank you all for watching, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and hope you all have a nice day.